There's a first time for everything as Medicaid spending falls in Arkansas. City leaders in Arkadelphia and farmers in the Delta keep a close eye on China. A proposal to limit legislators' service is back on the ballot, and reading the tea leaves for clues to November. Arkansas Week is next.
Local broadcast of Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the award-winning Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, Arkansas's largest major newspaper, bringing you local, national, and international news since 1819. By the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Arkansas Week. I'm Lance Turner of Arkansas Business, sitting in for Steve Barnes. Well, it was something you don't hear every day. Medicaid spending by a state actually falling in the most recent fiscal year, but that was the result here in Arkansas, where the governor, lawmakers, and other leaders have been aiming to curb the growth of a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. It's a tricky proposition because the program caters to some of the state's most vulnerable people. The efforts to accomplish that goal and the results are where we begin tonight. And joining us is Dr. Cindy Gillespie, who is the director of the State Department of Human Services, which oversees this massive program. Dr. Gillespie, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
The headline number was pretty good. In the most recent fiscal year, Medicaid spending in Arkansas dropping by $22 million, the first annual drop in pretty much anyone's memory probably ever. Let's just say that. How'd you do it?
You said it very well when you opened. It wasn't something that we did alone at DHS. This was something that the path was started over 2 years ago when the governor asked the legislature to create a task force to look at how to improve the health care programs here in the state and how to stop the spending growth that was going on. We had gone from 2014 to last year from spending about $5 billion to spending $7 billion, a $2 billion growth in a few years. So he challenged the legislature to develop a roadmap to save over $835 million over a 5-year period. And the Healthcare Task Force did develop a very good roadmap, and we have, the governor accepted it and applauded them and told us, go to work. And so we have been implementing on that roadmap over the last 2 years and following it. It is, as you said, unprecedented to actually have zero growth. So it's a confluence of a number of things happening all at once. Part is that roadmap, and I can talk about some of the pieces that have gone on with that. Part of it is the economy. I mean, as you said, Medicaid is to serve the poor, those who need the safety net, and the economy rising means more people are working and more people are moving off of Medicaid because their income is going up, which is great. And we also initiated at the department, you may remember that a couple of years ago we had a massive backlog that had built up around our eligibility program. We had over 180,000 cases, 180,000 families whose eligibility was backlogged, caught in the system, all kinds of a mess.
This is determining their eligibility for the program.
Determining their eligibility for the program, or determining changes that need to be made around their eligibility. Perhaps their income has gone up, perhaps their income has gone down, they may have a child, all kinds of things. That backlog was a substantial problem in terms of being able to do any kind of significant efforts to keep your rolls current and accurate. So the backlog, we did tackle that and cleared that out in about 8 months. And so we started in 2017 for the first time in many years with a program that was current. And we were able to begin a number of accuracy initiatives really designed to ensure that the people on the rolls should be on the rolls, and ensure that people who came through the system needing to get on the Medicaid rolls could get on it quickly and appropriately.
Can we talk about the number of people who are on these programs now? Because we've got some new numbers there as well. Because enrollment, a decline in enrollment or fewer people on the program is a big driver of keeping those costs down.
It's a huge driver. So when we started the fiscal year, over a year, which begins July of every year. So when we started the state fiscal year in July, we were over 1 million people. And we're now down to, in Medicaid total, 927,000. So the drop has been close to 100,000 individuals in Medicaid in a year. And that's on both the traditional side with the children, as well as children, adults, developmentally disabled, and seniors aging, as well as Arkansas Works. Arkansas Works now is down to 270,000 individuals on Arkansas Works, and I think at its high it was around 333,000.
Right, and that was a number that was, when we first started hearing about what once was known as the private option, the Medicaid expansion under the Obamacare, as it was called, the projections were that you would have a population of about anywhere from, in the range of around 250 on that program, but it ballooned. Why did it balloon? Why did we miss those projections so badly?
That I don't know. I just know when I came in, it was up there near the 300,000 range and was rising. So not sure why, but I also do know that some of the efforts, you saw the economy start to turn around, and B, then the accuracy efforts as the backlog went away, allowed us to really go in and scrub the rolls and look and see who's there. One of the simple accuracy efforts we run is they call it a Paris match, and it looks at who's on the rolls in other states. And so what we do is we run that now, and we're able to cross-match and see if there's anyone on the rolls in Arkansas, anyone on the rolls in another state.
And you can't be on both.
You can't be on both.
Right.
So then we reach out to see where they're actually living now. I mean, are they in Arkansas or are they not in Arkansas? If they're not in Arkansas, they come off the rolls. So we get a feed. This is a simple one that has helped us. We get a feed now for the first time from the Department of Workforce Service of new hires. And so when we get that data feed, we match that, and if somebody's showing a new job, we reach out to see, did your income go up?
Right. That's going to affect how much you're getting.
Because people may not think to let us know.
Right.
I've got a new job, my income's gone up, and they may even be on their employer's insurance now, and not have let us know.
You do have a work requirement piece in place now, and that was one of the probably the bigger victories for the administration this year in working with the Trump administration to get certain waivers around that program to be able to tailor the program to just what you want here in Arkansas.
Yes.
I know it's early on the work requirement process, but what kind of effect do you think that's going to have on your roles?
Our hope is that the effect will be that by introducing more people in the program to the services that are available in the state to help them get skills, training, do job search, apprenticeships, that more people on Arkansas Works will begin to have a higher degree of education and skills, be able to get jobs, and be able to move off the program. I mean, that is the goal, is that they move off the program because they no longer need to be actually on Medicaid. They now have employment with insurance, or they're able to move up the ladder, and if they choose to stay in an Arkansas Works insurance product, they're able to do it themselves by buying it in the individual insurance market. So.
Are you happy with the outreach to? You're dealing with a population that can be a little tricky to reach advertising wise, and in terms of getting them in the system to respond, to be able to declare where they stand work requirement wise. Are you happy with how that works? I mean, there has been a little criticism that maybe these people can't go online, maybe they can't watch a YouTube video. I mean, are there other things that you're trying to do to reach that population?
Yes, we're engaged in a very aggressive effort, and frankly, anytime anyone has another idea about how we might reach people, we jump right on it. But because we do want to reach the individuals out there and make sure they know how and what to do. We've done a couple of things. while there is the online portal, and that's the way individuals can report or get an exemption or let us know that they are now working full time, we also have what we're calling registered reporters. In other words, someone can let us know, and we have church pastors who have done this, we have insurance brokers who've done it. All the insurance companies that are insuring these Arkansas Works individuals have registered reporters. It's a very easy process to become a registered reporter, and that allows someone to do it for someone. So if someone needs some help, then a registered reporter will help them. We have a call center where someone can call, and if they need help or questions, one of the things we do is we will refer them over to their insurance company, and their insurance company will go online and help them. So we're trying to find various ways so that if someone does not have, it's not easy for them to go online, there are ways for them to still report without having to do it themselves. One of the things that is very important about our model here is, like I said, we buy insurance for these individuals. So there are 3 insurance companies in the state who have a vested interest in helping these individuals both report their activities and help get them connected to the services. They're not just out there on their own. There is an insurance company that is between us and that individual. So it's a different setup than in other states.
Well, there you have it, Dr. Gillespie. We've run out of time, but thanks for coming in, and we'll be back in just a moment with our panel. All right, and we're back with our panel to discuss some of the other topics that made the headlines this week here in Arkansas. Joining us first from the University of Central Arkansas Political Science Department, Assistant Professor Dr. Heather Yates. From Arkansas Public Media, reporter Bobby Ampazon. And from Talk Business and Politics and his own website, independentarkansas.com, Steve Bronner. Guys, thanks for coming in. It was another week of tariff talk and trade disputes, and we saw some more of that continue to intensify this week. Earlier this week, the U.S. Trade Representative finalized $16 billion worth of tariffs on Chinese goods, tariffs that will take effect later this month. In response, China retaliates, announcing a 25% tariff on $16 billion worth of U.S. goods. Those include everything from vehicles to fuels to plastic products and more. This tariff dispute also having some pretty concrete effects here in Arkansas, particularly in Clark County, where they're waiting for a little project to come to fruition down there, and it hasn't quite happened yet. Bobby, what are we talking about?
Yeah, well, let me say first that it's a really interesting time for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Normally a trusted lieutenant in the kind of Republican ranks, and they're having to create some distance between this administration and their own agenda, because this tariffs, the back and forth of tariffs, is really unsettling for business. And we see that most profoundly with Sun Paper down in Arkadelphia. This is a almost $2 billion investment that a Chinese company is making in the area to create a paper factory, which is good for South Arkansas's timber industry, if nothing else. But it would bring in between 200 and 300 jobs. I saw the Associated Press reporting this week that that it's kind of, obviously it's on hold. And in fact, Governor Hutchinson has sent his economic chief, Mike Preston, to China to try to, get this going against the momentum of tariffs that have stalled so much across the country and here in Arkansas too. Never mind the fact that we're a huge soybean producing state, and the soybean crop is going to be a wash this year. It might be a loss for farmers because of the tariffs.
Yeah, and speaking of farming, John Bozeman is in the state this week, as are a lot of our congressional district or congressional delegation is, because of the summer holiday. He was hearing from farmers this week about what the impact is that they're feeling. What is the pressure that these legislators are under, and how are they negotiating so far, Steve? Maybe having to deal with people who have very legitimate concerns about their businesses and agriculture and other places, but yet a Republican administration that's really aggressively causing some of this pain.
Well, right now they have to follow the president's lead. I mean, there's only so much they can do. This is right now the action is in the White House. Congress isn't even in Washington right now. The president's extremely popular with the Republican base. So they're just having to watch their words, try, if they're opposed to the tariffs, they have to say that they are as carefully as they can without being too provocative, and just having to walk that tightrope. You know, I think the ultimate example is Representative Crawford in the 1st District. His district has one of the biggest steel producing counties in the country, Mississippi County,
which could benefit
which
from
benefits from the tariffs greatly. Meanwhile, it's also one of the most prominent farming districts in the country, and they're hurting with this. And so far, he has been all in on tariffs. He's all the way, and so that's the side he's chosen. Others have been more circumspect, but they've got, you know, politics is part of it, and President Trump is the leader of the party, and they can't cross him too far.
The governor continuing to sound notes of patience, but how far does that patience run?
Well, we'll see after the midterms. Right now, he's wanting to frame the narrative very positively because he's also in a precarious position, right? He's in this position as the Republican governor of Arkansas wanting to support the White House. I mean, he's even been in Washington talking about these issues, trying to get the president's ear. And he's also running for re-election. So we'll see. That's why I say we need to wait until the November election. But right now, I think he's also framing the narrative of patience because he's also wanting the agrarian industry in Arkansas to have patience because the farmers are still very optimistic about Trump. But he doesn't want, the governor doesn't want that needle to move in any negative direction. So right now he's just trying to keep the state in a holding pattern in terms of the public opinion, and also the holding pattern too in terms of any anxiousness that might be felt about these industries that will be impacted, because the impact is not foreseen yet, but what's on the horizon is not promising. But yeah, he's rightly so saying we need to remain in a hold pattern. We don't know what variables are solid yet. And that's likely to be the case probably until November for political reasons.
Let's move on to term limits. It looks as if Arkansas might have a chance to curtail the terms that legislators serve in the legislature. Supporters of a proposal to do just that got the approval of signatures from the Secretary of State's office, qualifying it for the November ballot. We've been here before with term limits, so what is new about what's being proposed in this? Really very little, because the current status of term limits is that it's 16 years. It's 16 years in either chamber altogether. It's a lifetime term limit, meaning that you don't serve your 16 years and then come back after 2 years and run again. So it can be a little bit misleading, because even when the petition was circulating around the state, this gives the impression to some residents that Arkansas doesn't have term limits. And so in terms of, so what's being proposed on the initiative, it's 6 years in the House, 8 years in the Senate. So very little change if you take a look at the global picture here. What I find interesting in this year, 2018, being the year of proposing an initiative like this, is because a lot of activists or residents always look to term limits as an anti-corruption measure. And in these last several years, with this anti-establishment sentiment growing nationwide, term limits seems to be the go-to solution. It's the new hotness. As to curtail this perception of corruption. But there's some unintended consequences that I want to put out there. And I know we have limited time today, so I've just brought two with me. That's cool. Because there's been a great deal of research done about the unintended consequences of term limits on state legislatures. And over time, these have been longitudinal studies, have found that term limits tend to be advantageous, more advantageous, believe it or not, to the Republican Party. And secondly, research has also suggested that term limits will actually impact or change legislative behavior. So it kind of is counterintuitive to this anti-corruption measure, this anti-corruption banner that a lot of activists promoted under. Exacerbate some of those tendencies, maybe? And it actually gives the residents actually more of maybe what they don't want. Because in, let's say, you know, a legislator that's getting ready to be termed out, in that last 2 or 4 year term, they're effectively a lame duck legislator. And the research has pointed to that this behavior, legislators start focusing on other concerns beyond their duties, and what the takeaway point is, they're less responsive to constituents, which is exactly what these activists who are promoting term limits have a chief complaint with anyway. We've had some high-profile corruption scandals unfolding this year, Bobby.
Right, and I would point out that the three legislators that come to mind when I think of recent corruption, Jake Files, John Woods, and Micah Neal, all, unless I'm mistaken, they were all within what the term limits would cap them out. In other words, they were not long-serving legislators. So it may be that term limits simply, as you point out, accelerate the point at time in which lobbyists or other interests begin to infiltrate legislators' lives in such a way that they make unfortunate decisions.
Steve, what are our chances? Anytime this goes before the people, it's probably, I mean, a lot of voters might say, hey, this is not a bad idea. Maybe.
The chances are it's going to pass. You know, the big change here is that there is also a total limit of 10 years. Right now the limit is 16. The big change is if there's going to be a 10-year limit of whatever you serve in, which basically makes it very unlikely that many will serve that many years. Most will probably not, because it's very hard to time that out. So it will be a significant change in that area, and and it will likely pass, because the first one passed in 1992 with 59% of the vote. Legislators came back again in 2004 with a longer time span, and it failed by 70%, 70-30, so not even close.
Failed, right.
In 2014, the legislature kind of snuck a term limits change
into the ethics,
right. amendment.
Air quotes ethics. That's right.
Ethics. It was I'm not one to. They kind of pull a fast one on that one, to be very honest with you.
Right.
And it got through about 52-48%. So it was very close, but with the term limits on its own, standing alone on the ballot, it's very unlikely that it's going to fail. It seems likely it's going to pass.
All right. Moving on to Exxon. This is something in this part of the world where we tape in Conway, something near and dear to folks around here, the Mayflower oil spill. Still dealing with elements of that, but this week we learned that maybe we're a little closer to a settlement than we were before with Exxon over the Pegasus oil spill. Bobby.
5 years after the Pegasus pipeline burst in Mayflower, we have the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission proposing to Exxon a settlement for less than $2 million, which, depending on how you follow these things, I mean, at least to my ears, sounds really quite low.
Right.
We're not talking about punitive damages here. This is just a settlement that would attempt to repair the damage done by the oil spill and affect an 80-acre area of Lake Conway, along Lake Conway, that would be, I don't want to call it a sanctuary, but would be part of the settlement. The Sierra Club Executive Director, Glenn Hooks, is proposing that any settlement include actual civilians or residents affected by the spill. So it appears that this deal is up to Exxon right now, but it's been 5 years, and at least some proposal now is being made. We'll see. It certainly, I don't think, would short circuit any kind of civil lawsuit that may or may not be currently in the works.
And where would this settlement leave us? I mean, would this be the end, or are there other lingering things sitting out there with it, or would this pretty much resolve the legal action involved with that?
Yeah, almost certainly the settlement would include, any kind of future. In other words, the government couldn't then file another suit. The state of Arkansas could not file a future lawsuit.
All right. Moving on to midterms, this has sort of lurked around most topics that we've talked about today. There were some primaries and some runoff races that taking place across the country, not here in Arkansas, but some of those we think we can maybe read the tea leaves a bit and kind of learn some lessons and look ahead to what we might be able to expect maybe for the midterms in November. Heather, what struck you about what you watched this week? What were the key things that you took away?
Yeah, so on Tuesday, 5 states held elections, and of the 5, a particular important one that I think has implications for Arkansas was the Ohio 12th U.S. House District. And I think there's some similarities that we can profile between the Ohio 12th and the Arkansas 2nd. Now, the Arkansas 2nd is kind of hitting the radar nationally because we have Clark Tucker, who is a DCCC-backed candidate, but there's some similarities of what's happening in Arkansas 2nd. It is becoming a little more competitive because of Tucker's ability to fundraise a lot of cash and fundraise quickly. So what the similarities are between the Ohio 12 district is it's centrally located in Ohio. It's just north of Columbus. It's got a few shared borders with an urban area. The Arkansas 2nd District, centrally located. Both are largely rural agrarian districts. We have in both districts, we have Trump-supported or Trump-backed or Trump-favorable candidates.
Right.
Trump has not come out and rallied for French Hill, but French Hill is definitely within the support column of Donald Trump. Clark Tucker, DCCC backing, both Clark Tucker and Danny O'Connor, who is the Democratic challenger, if I can get the parties right,
yes.
Democratic challenger in Ohio. They are both running also this anti-Pelosi platform as a way to strategize or rebuff the Republican critiques or the Republican accusals of being in the pocket of the Democratic establishment. So these are some similarities here. One other thing that I would like to leave the audience with as a takeaway is the amount of cash in the Ohio 12 that we can possibly anticipate in November.
A lot of money.
There were at least 25 PACs funneling money into the Ohio 12. And so the independent expenditures reached upwards about $3.9 million to oppose O'Connor and about $2.9 million to support Balderson. And so if that's the amount of cash that was targeted on one special election in a U.S. House district, we have just under 90 days in the Arkansas 2nd District, and I would anticipate that we might see the inflow of a lot of outside spending.
It may not be as sleepy a season as maybe we might have thought a few months ago. Right. All right. That is all the time we have for this week, guys. Thanks for coming in. We appreciate it. And thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Local broadcast of Arkansas Week is made possible in part by the award-winning Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, Arkansas's largest major newspaper, bringing you local, national, and international news since 1819. By the Arkansas Times, keeping you informed by covering people, events, and politics in Arkansas. By FM 89, KUAR in Little Rock, with in-depth news reporting, analysis, and discussion each weekday.